Hello, I'm Adam Lewis.
I'm Jacob Simpson.
And I'm Joe Coburn.
And we are
Open Up Studios.
In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products?
Our title sequence follows many comedy conventions. One convention we follow is focusing on the protagonist and building up his character, introducing as a fall guy early on in the film. This build-up provides the audience with background information. This early build-up is a convention of many comedies. Specific examples of these include Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. Establishing the traits of the character is used to set up jokes that appear later in the film. In this case, it allows the audience to relate to the protagonist. Another convention of comedy is to use montages. This gets a lot of information across to the audience in a short period of time. And in our case, sets up a punchline at the end, which is a juxtaposition. This is another convention used in comedies, as juxtapositions are major sources of humour. Our juxtaposition comes at the end of our title sequence, when the protagonist has got a bit of mojo and suits up and then is crushed by his mother, which mothers him.
Put a coat on, love, it's chilly outside.
Because she's a mother. This punchline comes at the end of the title sequence, which fits with the genre conventions of comedies. To set up the joke, we use fast cutting speed and changes to intense music, which appears serious. This is a convention used in comedies to have serious bits which set up bits of humour. The name of our film also sticks with English film conventions, using a play on words of other serious film. Another example of this is Shaun of the Dead, which is a play on words with Dawn of the Dead. We decided to use diegetic text, similar to the titles used in Napoleon Dynamite, but saying spiders very much so. The shot where our protagonist trips when he is trying to impress a girl is a common shot used in comedies. We don't challenge many conventions, but we don't have any dialogue or voiceover which could be seen as a challenge to comedy conventions. How does your media product represent particular social groups?
There are several ways that we have represented social groups in our film. One of these is through the daily tasks that our protagonist undertakes during our opening. The protagonist represents teenagers, more specifically British teenage boys that go to college and are working to middle class. To represent this social group, we use mise-en-scène. The Xbox controller and school books represent teens. The locations show the protagonist in a school, and the things that he does at school are relatable to the audience, such as doodling. The way he relates to the middle working class is by the way he dresses and his house. We have tried to create a British theme with the colours of the mise-en-scène chosen, which obviously represents a British audience. What kind of media institution might distribute your media product and why?
From the fact that they supported other parody films, such as Scary Movie, a company like Dimension Films would be a suitable institute for our film. They have a large amount of films which are from individual production companies. Another institute that may distribute a film is that of the film festival companies. These are companies that organise a selection of individual films, which are made by amateurs, to take part in a festival where each film is watched by thousands of people. An example of one of these companies is Sundance Institute, which holds the Sundance Festival. This company alone provides the funding for small individual films to be played on the big screen. This fits in well with our film, and therefore is a possible option for distributing it. However, after research, we've found that there is a very limited amount of media institutes that distribute individual English comedies. Who would be the audience for your media product?
Our audience are teenagers and young adults. Being a parody of spy films, the intended audience will have watched films such as James Bond. This allows the audience to appreciate the humour of the film, as well as giving them a brief idea as to the narrative of the film. Generally, action films like the ones we are parodying are aimed at a male target audience, so our film would also be aimed at men. It doesn't contain any swearing, sexual scenes or excessive violence, so it would be appropriate for younger teenagers. The comedy is of a simple slapstick nature, which allows most people to understand the humour, meaning the audience is quite wide. It is aimed at British audience, as the protagonist and other characters are British, meaning the audience should easily relate to them. The comedy genre has a wide audience, as all ages enjoy comedies, if the content isn't offensive, which our film isn't. How did you attract or address your audience?
The main way we attract our audience is through the use of comedy that our audience can understand and relate to. Our protagonist is the same age as our target audience, which allows the audience to relate to him easily. This relation creates a humour when our protagonist is established as the fall guy in our film. Specific examples where the audience could relate to the protagonist are when he burns his toast, or the final punchline when the protagonist's mum mothers him because she is a mum. Also, like the main character, our audience may often have hopes and dreams. We will thus relate to the protagonist becoming a spy. The shots we used of the house showed that he lives in a middle-class, average environment. This may appeal to our audience as they may live in a similar house. Spies are commonly portrayed as cool and exciting in many films and other forms of media, and being a parody of a spy film will attract our audience. Also, people are familiar with spy films such as James Bond and Mission Impossible, so our audience of these films will be attracted by our film. What have you learned about technologies from the process of constructing this product?
We've learnt two main areas, which is the hardware and the software. From the hardware area, we've pretty much learnt how to use the camera more effectively and how to actually do effects with the camera. But most came in the software area. After a brief introduction to Sony Vegas Pro from our preliminary task, we had developed numerous new techniques to edit and change our films. The main effect we used was that of the crop and zoom function. We used this to emphasise moments of humour in the film, like when Glenn bumps his head on the ceiling. For the first draft of our film opening, we used some diegetic text and some non-diegetic. From this, we learned how to insert artificial text into our film. We used this in our final draft for the title of the film and for the title director. A piece of software that we used that wasn't Sony Vegas Pro was Photoshop. The version at school of this wasn't very developed, so we had to use it away from class. The shots we used in this for the name of the toast and the name written in clouds. This is how we made the titles both diegetic and legible. In the montage scene where Glenn changed into a suit, we had to use an increased playback rate. This made it look like it was a quick change, whereas in real life his clothes had actually taken a long time to put on. In our second film, we also developed more techniques as to make your film look more professional. One of these techniques is that of converting a single frame into a photo. This technique we used to freeze the film whilst the titles were present. Alongside these photos were the effects of black and white and the effect of brightness/contrast. These led to make the photos more atmospheric and appropriate for the scene. Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you have learnt in the progression from it to the full product?
One of these methods is that of planning. Straight away, the time it took to plan all the aspects of Live and Let Spy was half the time it took for the locker room. This gave us more time to shoot the edit and opening. We did this by organising who did which roles in the planning at the very start, and we had finished the planning soon after. Another planning improvement we made was that instead of having a brief idea and adapting it to the shots of wherever we were, we religiously used the storyboard and adapted the environment to fit. This led to a more professional look, and we were able to keep on track of the shots whilst filming. The shots may also have been improved by the way that we focused more on the mise-en-scène of the shots. This included the camera angles and the objects in the background, and the tasks the protagonist does. This was mostly down to the fact that we planned our location before planning the shots. Therefore, the shots didn't look stark and bare, like in the locker room, but packed and more professional. The final part of planning that was improved was our schedule for shooting. Unlike the preliminary, we actually had a set time and date for shooting of this instead whenever we were free, like in the locker room. This gave us the extra time we needed for editing the piece of work.
A significant improvement has been the variety of choice of camera shots. In our preliminary film, we only used medium shots, but the variety is better in Live and Let Spy and our other title sequence, The Package. We have utilised close-ups to show items of importance, such as the glasses. The variety of close-ups in the montage creates a fast tempo to build up to the punchline. We also use a long shot in our second title sequence, The Package. This not only adds a change to the pace of the chase, but maintains the audience interest with a good location.
For the editing side of things, the locker room was a lot more simplistic and we used less effects than what we did for Live and Let Spy. For one, we didn't use any of the playback rate system, so when we were running through halls everything looked really slow. We also didn't use much of the zoom and pan. We just cropped it so it didn't look that good. When we walked with the camera or used camera movements in the locker room, is juddering, didn't really work, whereas we used the more like steady hand in Live and Let Spy. Also, the cutting speed. In locker room we thought we went for shots that were long and few, whereas Live and Let Spy we actually went for the time and the mood. And matched it to music was probably the most important thing. Like, we added emphasis on the comedy areas and just kept normal pace for everything else.
Ready to go.